Thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts football podcast, where we discuss the latest news, rumors, and games of the NFL and college football. From the latest signs, just as breakout stars, and all the news in between. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
Hey, and I'm Anthony.
And yes, we are back again with another episode for you guys. And a lot has happened the past 24 hours, especially right when I got off the air. We had some big breaking news. And that breaking news from yesterday was that the Buffalo Bills fired Rex Ryan after pretty much like 2 seasons with the team. And he's obviously not going to coach Week 17 for the Bills. So he didn't even last a full 2 seasons.
Right.
And then remember, I think he didn't even get him to a winning season. I think the last coach to bring the Bills to a winning season was Doug Marrone, and that was 9-7. And I think this move, honestly, I think it depends on general manager Doug Whaley. I just feel like they haven't really found a coach to pretty much work with Whaley. I feel like Whaley's been like a really hard general manager to work with the past couple years. And the big thing that I kind of took from this, or I kind of read, was that Rex Ryan really wanted Tyrod Taylor to be the starting quarterback. The front office wanted AJ Manuel. And with Rex Ryan not going to be there for Week 17, it has been decided that the Bills are going to bench Tyrod Taylor and they're going to start AJ Manuel. I don't like that. I already know what AJ Manuel can do. I actually think Tyrod Taylor is a more talented player. But yeah, Anthony, what are your thoughts on Rex Ryan and the Buffalo Bills organization here?
So the thing with Buffalo and Rex Ryan, like, you knew that he was going to get fired because you heard for the last couple of weeks kind of the rumblings of like, oh, they might fire him. And even before that, they fired the offensive coordinator, kind of a thing of where they fire him just to kind of save his job a little bit, give him kind of a scapegoat or whatever. It's like, okay, it was his fault, he's fired. Now give me a couple of weeks. And, you know, this whole year has kind of been that whole thing. Like, he brought in his brother, Rob, to try and help out. Doesn't exactly do the same thing. The whole season hasn't been one that's been any type of good for them because they've been 7-8. And rushing defense-wise, they're 28th in the NFL. They've had bad games. So Jay Ajayi had 3 games where he had 200 yards rushing. 2 of those were against the Bills. And then when Le'Veon Bell lost his mind and rushed for over 230 yards, that was against Buffalo Bills. So those work in his favor. Also last week against the Miami Dolphins, along with Jay Ajayi rushing for 200 yards, they had the kind of blunder at the end of the game where you try to do the thing where you freeze the kicker and call a timeout before they snap the ball. Only he didn't do it before they snapped the ball. They got the field goal. Everything worked. Now he looks kind of like a bozo for doing that. Add all those things up with the Tyrod Taylor thing to where now he's going to get benched. And I saw something where it's basically if they cut him before next year starts, I think it's before April or May, they don't owe him a $30 million contract thing, which basically means they're going to do that because if they don't want him to be the starting quarterback, they're definitely not going to pay a backup that much money. So they're the 11th team right now in the draft. They're going to probably, if they lose next game, maybe they can be a top 10 pick. At that point, you could probably get a good quarterback in the draft. Maybe you do that, just kind of push the reset button. Maybe they go after Tony Romo, which we'll get to in a little bit. It's one of those things with the Bills. Rex Ryan, he's probably not going to get another head coaching job because he's one of the guys who, we've seen for the last 4 years, I think it was, in New York and 2 years now in Buffalo. We know what he can do. Yes, he did get to 2 AFC championship games, but since then I don't believe he's made the playoffs. So it's one of those things where he's kind of got a resume to where he's a player's coach, but he hasn't had a winning season since 2010. So with all of that being considered, he's probably going to go into like the booth situation, which he'll be fantastic at. Him in the booth, whether it's CBS, Fox, or ESPN, whatever he goes to, he's going to be great because he's got all the takes. He's just going to unload, and it's going to be fantastic.
He definitely has a personality for it.
It's going to be great. And he, was not a bad coach. I mean, he was 8-8 and 7-8, and they were playing the Jets this week, so he could have basically been 8-8 again, getting his inner Jeff Fisher on. And he can basically, he didn't fail in Buffalo. He just never lived up to the expectations that we wanted for him. And if you think about it, with the Buffalo Bills next year, let's say they get a good quarterback. Let's say they go after somebody, either a veteran or someone high in the draft. I mean, you still got LaShawn McCoy and you still got Sammy Watkins, so you have at least a good offensive team out there. And if he can get someone who can make that a little bit better, it's going to at least be optimistic for the Bills. And for Rex Ryan, I mean, he'll land on his feet. He'll be somewhere else. It's just, they didn't have a lot of faith in him, and after less than 2 years, they just said, all right, cool, you're done. Bye.
Yeah, and this honestly says two things. Rex Ryan, honestly, I kind of agree he's not going to get I don't think he's going to get a coaching job again. He hasn't had a winning record, like you said, since 2010.
Right.
And as for the Bills, the playoff drought has extended to 17 seasons, and the last coach the last coach to take the Bills to the playoffs was Wade Phillips in 1999.
Right.
But before that, there have been 7 different head coaches since Marv Levy, the legendary Marv Levy. Levy has left the team after the 97 season. So, they had Wade Phillips, Greg Williams, Mike Mularkey, Dick Geron, Chan Gailey, Doug Marrone, and Rex Ryan. And
Perry Field.
Yeah, and Perry Field. Perry Field. He was the interim coach at one time. Only one of those 7 coaches had a record that was over 500.
Yeah.
And Doug Marrone actually took them to their first winning season in a while in 2000, I think since 2008. But he opted out of his contract.
Right.
And then that's when Rex Ryan came in the organization. So I do think the fact that they have 2 head coaches that just didn't work out, I think this says more about the organization than the actual coach. Because Doug Marrone actually looks like he actually looked like they were on the right track to being a really good team. Because he took him to a winning record. And Rex Ryan, he inherited. This is probably the best team he inherited. I think he had. Honestly, you can make an argument that it was the best team since he first got to New York. So, I do think the most important thing is that they have to find a coach that's going to work really well with Doug Whaley there. He looks like he's one of those power-hungry general managers. It's going to be interesting to see who takes over the Bills head coaching vacancy, and I do think they have a lot of talent on this team still. They got Sammy Watkins. I don't know if Tyrod Taylor is going to be back over there. They want to have EJ Manuel as a quarterback there. They might get a quarterback in the draft. I wouldn't be surprised about that. They got LaShawn McCoy, a top 5 running back in the game. They do have some pieces. They have a lot of great pieces on defense. So I do think whoever takes over for the Bills as the head coach is going to have a good team. But I think the most important thing is how are they going to gel with the front office there in Buffalo. I do think it's been really dysfunctional the past couple of years. And I do want to point out, Anthony Lynn is actually the interim coach for the Week 17 game for Buffalo. And I actually like the journey that Anthony Lynn has kind of made. He went from running back coach to offensive coordinator to interim coach to possibly a head coaching candidate. So I have to congratulate him on that part. He's kind of made a really great journey in 1 year. He probably will be a head coach maybe next year. I don't know if that's going to happen, but wouldn't be surprised if he did. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And I'm not surprised that Rex Ryan was gone. I kind of knew it was going to happen, and we've been talking about that he's been on the hot seat since September. But I'm not surprised that's going to happen. He's not going to get a head coaching job. He has proven that he just can't really win the big games. The Bills this year were 1-7 against teams with a winning record.
Right.
He was 15-16 in 31 games, and his overall coaching record is 6-1-66. So
right.
He, like you said, you are what your record says you are, and he's not a winning coach.
No, he's not a winning coach. He's not a terrible coach. He's a fine coach. Like, he'll probably do some defensive coordinator stuff because that's kind of his specialty. That's what he did. The whole Brian name, be it Buddy or even Rob, even though Rob hasn't been that great. That's kind of the bread and butter. That's what he'll do. He'll probably take a year or two off, do some booth stuff, have a lot of fun with that, and then maybe he'll decide to come back. Oh, thought I just sneezed. come back maybe in a couple of years, or maybe he does the John Gruden thing where he stays out. Excuse me. There it is.
Bless you.
There it is. Maybe he decides to come back, or maybe he pulls a John Gruden, Bill Cowher, where he's just like, you know what? I think I like this booth stuff. I'm just going to stay here. But, the one thing that was good about Rex Ryan was that he never was the guy that basically yelled at his players through the media, right? He never said, like, oh, they messed up. He always was the one that basically made himself the human pinata, the human meat shield of the whole thing, and basically was just like, I'll take the blunt of this. I'll basically get yelled at, because this whole season, right, it was all basically let's yell at Rex Ryan. It was never a thing about, oh, let's yell at Tyrod Taylor, or oh, let's yell at LaShawn McCoy, or oh, let's yell at, Sammy Watkins. Like, it was never one of those things. We always basically yelled at him, which probably made the players super happy because they didn't have to worry about it all throughout the week. I mean, yeah, they maybe had to talk about the head coach getting fired, but they didn't have to worry about their job and stuff like that and saying, like, oh, you've been bad. It's just like, oh, well, we don't like the coach.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Bills organization. I do think, honestly, I thought they were a playoff team, probably a sleeper wildcard team heading into the year. But it's just like they were just really, really too inconsistent on both sides of the ball. But we're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some comments made from Terry Bradshaw, and we're going to get about Mike Tomlin, and we're going to get Mike Tomlin's reaction. We're going to talk about his reaction when we come back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. And there were some comments made by Hall of Fame quarterback and former Pittsburgh Steeler Terry Bradshaw about current head coach Mike Tomlin. And I think Mike Tomlin, he is probably the most underrated coach. I do think he's a great coach. And if you look at what he's done since Mike Tomlin has been the head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, you can honestly debate maybe he's close to being a really... If he wins one more Super Bowl, I think maybe you can probably put him in the Hall of Fame, arguably. You can make an argument about that.
Sure.
If he happens to win one more, maybe two more. But I do think maybe he can get one more this year. But apparently, Terry Bradshaw said that Mike Tomlin is more of a cheerleader guy. That he never pops up as a great coach at all. His name never even pops up in my mind when we think about great coaches in the NFL. And he said this, Terry Bradshaw said this on a show on FS1. It's called Speak For Yourself, which is hosted by Colin Cowherd and Jason Woodlock. Mm-hmm. So he said those comments on the show, and then Mike Tomlin, he kind of clacked back at him a little bit. So Mike Tomlin, this is his stance. He said, debate my resume, but Bradshaw went too far. This is what he said, quote, terms like cheerleader guy to me maybe fall outside bounds of critique or criticism. They probably fall more towards the area of disrespect and unprofessional, but what do I know? I grew up a Dallas fan, particularly a Thomas Hollywood Henderson fan. And Henderson said about Bradshaw a long time ago in 1979, like at the height of the Steelers and Cowboys rivalry, Henderson said, quote, he couldn't spell cat if you spotted him the C and the A. So basically, yeah, he kind of took a shot at him there.
He did. No, and here's the thing with Mike Tomlin. Like, Mike Tomlin's a really good coach. Like, he had 100 wins in 10 seasons, which is a really, really small list of people that's actually done that.
That's hard. It's hard to win at all in the league.
And he's basically on that list now of like Steelers coaches that are going to be there for 20 years. You had the whole thing with Chuck Noll, then you had the thing with Cowherd, now you get him. basically people that are going to be there for a really, really long time because they're really good at finding coaches. And he's won a Super Bowl. Yeah, you can say he won it with Cowboys players, but you could also say that about John Gruden, and we don't say that about John Gruden. And he was also on Gruden's staff as a defensive backs coach in 2002. He's a really, really, really good coach in the sense of, like, he's never had a losing season. The worst he ever did was 8-8 a couple of years with Steelers, or obviously with the Steelers. But since then, 11-5, 10-6, and now at least 10-6 if they lose this week. And he's going to be in the playoffs again. And outside of the Patriots, tell me a team in the AFC that you think has a better shot of making it to the Super Bowl, because the Raiders don't have Carr.
I can see Kansas City. I think there's
maybe Kansas City, yeah. But
other than that,
I would put them as a second behind the Patriots, just because the Patriots are the Patriots.
Yeah.
But Carr is out for the Raiders. Matt Moore is the quarterback now for the Dolphins, and the Houston Texans look garbage with Savage. Well, they look bad with Osweiler too. And the thing with Terry Bradshaw basically has, and he always has had, a very get off my lawn kind of situation with the Steelers, right? Because he criticized Ben Roethlisberger for a really long time. You can call him justified or not with the stuff that happened with Roethlisberger years ago with the allegations. He's had a thing against Ben Roethlisberger for a very long time, and now he's taking shots at Mike Tomlin, who I don't understand why he would kind of take shots at him, because honestly, outside of maybe Andy Reid and Bill Belichick, maybe Pete Carroll, they're the best coaches in the NFL, right? Tomlin's been there for a while, and the team has always been at least really competitive, if not making it to at least 2 Super Bowls, right? They've been a really, really good team for a very long period of time. And the other thing is, yeah, he clapped back about Hollywood Henderson spotting him the C and an A, because that was kind of Bradshaw's thing, was it wasn't really his thing of winning the Super Bowls. It was that defense. It was a steel curtain. It was Franco Harris. It was Lynn Swann. It was Stallworth. It was those guys that were doing it, not necessarily him. The other thing is there are some racial undertones with this whole thing, because people have said before, because I said this before when they said that Tomlin was a player's coach, right? Because that basically indicates a sense that he basically is just kind of being the friend of the player, but you're not going to get that with the white coaches, right? So you kind of throw that at him, and that's not fair. When you call him a cheerleader, it's kind of doing the same thing, to where it's basically just like he's like a figurehead kind of coach, and he's not doing any of the actual coaching. And you look at him, fine, you can say the first time he won, when he went to the Super Bowl back in 2008, that was Cowboys players, fine. At this point, this is all him. Like, maybe Roethlisberger isn't, but everybody else on that team, basically, be it Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, anybody on that, James Harrison, maybe not, but I mean, he brought him back. All the players are his players, and this is his team, and he's the reason why they're the 3rd seed right now in the AFC, and he's a really good coach. And by just calling him a cheerleader, you're really disrespecting him on more than just a professional level. And he's someone who, you know, like I said, is going to be pretty high up there in the wins, because Pittsburgh's always going to, you know, assumingly contend for, you know, making it into the playoffs. And I mean, he's already got 102 wins. He's going to get 150 wins, something like that. He's going to get up pretty high on that list. And if you keep calling him a cheerleader kind of a coach, that's disrespecting him. That's disrespecting the players on his team, and that's disrespecting basically the fact of, I don't think you would do that for a white guy.
No. Think about what these. Getting back to what you were saying here, Anthony. Think about if these comments were made towards someone like Bill Belichick, right, Pete Carroll, their coaches that are white. It will be this story will be a whole lot different than we would talk about now. Mike Tomlin, he was he was a big part of that rule, the Rodney rule that was implemented. The Rooney rule, yeah. The Rooney rule, yeah. I don't know why I said Rodney rule. The Rooney rule, he was a big part of the reason why he was hired there. He was, which is, if you don't know what the Rooney rule is, it requires each team with the head coaching vacancy to interview at least one minority coach. Right. And then Mike Tomlin fell under that.
And he killed it.
And look at what he has done now. He wasn't even a leader in that head coaching vacancy when it happened, when Bill Cowher left, because, there's a lot of big shoes to fill.
Sure.
Mike Tomlin really killed it when he was offered this job, and he has been killing it ever since. And to the point, yes, those were Bill Cowher's players when he won the first Super Bowl, but majority of the players on that team except for Big Ben, are practically his guys. And he has drafted under his regimen. The Steelers have drafted well.
Oh yeah,
they drafted really well in defense the past couple of years as well. They have a lot of young, good defensive players this year.
Mm-hmm.
They're not as as dominant as they were maybe in the mid to late 2000s, but they're better. They're a team that can play against the Patriots, especially at Foxborough. I think they're the only team maybe that can beat them at Foxborough, which is they're probably going to have to do. Yeah, I just don't understand why you would make comments like this to a coach who has done so well for the past 10 years.
Right. And it could, like, we're talking about the racial stuff. It could be that. It also could just be Terry Bradshaw just being crotchety and just like, oh, he's not that good, you know.
Yeah, you know,
it could be that too.
I think that's what it mainly is. I'm not going to say Terry Bradshaw is a racist.
No, God, no.
I'm not saying that. But you know, he can definitely play that part. But I'm not going to sit here and then criticize Bradshaw because he's criticizing Tomlin because of the color of his skin. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying maybe if you put these comments towards these white coaches, it would have been a different story. But
things can involve race. They don't have to be racist.
They don't have to. But
and also, like you said, that you can be. If you talk to us about Pete Carroll, I would do around the same thing if you wanted to say like a player's coach. Pete Carroll probably is too because he's been the guy who has basically allowed his team to basically, like, if you want to venture, basically have some kind of a Festivus airing of grievances, like, you guys go do that, have fun with each other, and it's not going to be this big thing because they've had enough controversies this year, be it with Richard Sherman or Michael Bennett or whatever. They've said enough things that a lot of other coaches wouldn't have allowed them to do. So you can say the player's coach, whatever, with Pete Carroll and everything else, that might be the case, and maybe that's the same case with Mike Tomlin. There's just also, potholes and stuff like that you'd want to kind of avoid when it comes to stuff like that and the cheerleader thing. Because if he didn't say the cheerleader thing, I don't think he's that good of a coach. Okay, cool, fantastic. You don't think he's a good coach. But, the cheerleader part just seemed kind of excessive.
Yeah, and as I got to say, Terry Bradshaw's comments are absurd. That's all I got to say.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, they're pretty absurd. And I do think Tomlin is a great coach, and it'll be something to see the Steelers in Houston in February. Because I think the game is broadcasted on Fox this year. And Terry Bradshaw is a Fox Sports employee, so I do think it'll make for some great TV.
Right.
But, we're going to take our last break here, and we're going to discuss the Dallas Cowboys and a certain quarterback that we might not even see at all. So, we're going to discuss who that is when we come back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
And welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. All right, so for the last portion that we're going to do of the show, we're going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys and specifically what they decided to do with the quarterback situation. This whole season, we've seen Dak Prescott be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's somebody who kind of came out of nowhere. We had no expectations for him. And he's been an MVP candidate. Like, you can talk about maybe Ezekiel Elliott doing the same kind of thing as far as the MVP race. But if you're the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys and you lead the team to the best record in the NFC, you're definitely going to get MVP consideration. So for Week 17, there's been the controversy of whether it's beats Dak's team or Romo's team. And once Romo got back, Dak was playing so well, they're like, yeah, we're just going to keep Dak. And Romo, if all else fails, if he gets hurt or if he does really, really bad, maybe we bring you back. Now for Week 17, what they basically decided was Dak will start, Tony won't play, and Mark Sanchez will be the backup in case anything goes wrong. And there's a couple ways you can play this. There's a couple things that you can look at this. Basically, it can be, A, the fact that let's not play Tony Romo a lot because let's say Tony Romo gets let's say Dak Prescott comes in for the first quarter, and then they're up 14-0, and he's like, all right, cool, never mind, we're going to bench Dak. And then Romo comes in, throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. We're going to lose our minds. That's what's going to happen. We are just insane people. It's the Men in Black line. A person is smart, people are stupid kind of thing. We're just going to go in a Twitter mind crazy mind state, and we're going to yell about, oh, Romo should start, which is dumb. Or they don't want to hurt Tony Romo because let's say he gets into the game in the second half and then he separates his shoulder or he hurts his back or he tears a knee or whatever else like that. Then all that trade stuff they're trying to do goes out the window. Or they just basically don't want any kind of distraction whatsoever, whether he gets hurt or whether he plays well or whatever. It's just like, let's just not have anything. Let's go into the playoffs healthy because we saw Dak Prescott get hit a little bit last week. We saw Ezekiel Elliott get hit a little bit last week. And we saw Tyrone Smith get hurt, or not hurt, but hit a little bit last week. So all those things together were just like, you know what? Dak, you play as long as you feel it needs. Everybody else, get out. We're going to go to the playoffs. We're going to have a bye. Let's all be healthy. All right, let's go team.
Yeah, and I kind of do agree that Tony Romo shouldn't play. I do agree with it a lot. And I know they have the first seed locked up.
Right.
But that you got to put Dak in there, and then in case something does happen to Dak, you got Tony Romo to step in.
Right.
But I also think the reason why they don't want Tony Romo, or Jerry Jones, and that is, instead of using the word they, the reason why Jerry Jones doesn't want Tony Romo in the game at all is because, they're probably going to trade him this year, and I think they want him healthy for that. Because if you trade a hurt Tony Romo, again, like if he gets hurt, let's just say he does play this game and gets hurt, because it could happen. Let's just say that does happen. No one's going to want to trade for Tony Romo.
Right.
People are going to say, Tony Romo's probably done as a quarterback. And I don't think that's true. I do think Tony Romo still has 3 years, maybe 2 or 3 good years left in him if he goes to a contender. So for that reason alone, the trade value is too much of a risk to put him in there. I do think you got to get the most you can for a quarterback that's over 35.
Right. Yeah, that's
so for that I do agree with not playing Tony Romo.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like his trade value is what it is. Like as long as he doesn't get hurt, someone will want to trade for him. And maybe they don't trade him. Maybe Jerry Jones wants to keep him because Jerry Jones loves him like a child. But if they do decide to trade him, there's no point in putting him in week 17 and then he gets hurt. Then his trade value goes down because, we just saw this last offseason, Brock Osweiler basically got paid $70 million off of a couple of games. We know what Romo could do. Yeah, he might get hurt, but at the same time, if he is healthy, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, and you don't think a team like the Buffalo Bills or Jaguars or, even Dolphins, if Ryan Tannehill gets hurt again.
I think maybe the Broncos, too.
The Broncos, absolutely. One of these teams wouldn't basically say, like, all right, fine, Dallas, what do you want? You want a first-round pick? Fine, here's a first-round pick, because that's what they did for Sam Bradford, right? I saw recently that Jimmy Garoppolo, the Patriots are asking basically the first and fourth, which is basically what they did for Bradford. They're basically asking for that, which is totally understandable. So now with all this stuff, as long as he's healthy enough, they're going to trade for him, and they don't want to hurt him at all. Mark Sanchez, he's a good enough third-string quarterback. He's a great third-string quarterback.
He's probably the best third-stringer in the game.
Yeah, they got the best backup and the best third-string. He's totally capable. We joke about Mark Sanchez because he has the most infamous play in the NFL with the butt fumble, but he did have a team in the AFC Championship game for 2 straight years, and if he, for whatever reason you have to go to your third-string quarterback, he's not a terrible option. So the Cowboys are in a good spot. The number one quarterback led him to at least 13-3 record. The backup is a top 10 player in the NFL, and the third string got to 2 AFC Championship games.
Exactly. That's not that bad quarterback.
Not exactly.
When was the last time I ever seen this team stack that quarterback?
Quarterback, yeah.
I've never seen it.
Like the Dolphins have a decent enough backup in Matt Moore because he was a starter for a little while, but I don't even know who their third string is. Yeah. I'm a fan of the Dolphins. I have no idea who their third string is.
Yeah, and
like we saw that this year with the Patriots, they went to Brissett, who was third string and did okay, but not to this level with Sanchez. I don't know whoever had a third string this good.
I mean, neither. And there is reports saying that Mark Sanchez is going to be the backup for Dallas against the Philadelphia Eagles, right, which means Tony Romo might not even be active.
Yeah.
I do agree that Tony Romo shouldn't play, and if Dak happens to be really efficient, and if the Cowboys are in position to win the game, what's to say if it's a blowout, because I think it could happen.
Yeah. No, like that's the thing. Like
if it could happen, then you got to put Mark Sanchez in there. Probably sit Ezekiel Elliott as well.
If they're up,
put in Darren McFadden for a little bit.
Yeah, if they're up like 6 or 17-0 or something like that at the end of the first quarter, like you just look at Dak and be like, all right, come on, you're done. Like
Dak's not going to play. Zeke's not going to play. Dez is not going to play.
Right.
And those are the big three that are not going to play of this game.
And also,
really
you talk about backups. The backup is. Who you just said? Darren McFadden.
McFadden. That's a good back.
And
they got Alfred Morris. Is he hurt?
The third string.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Alfred Morris.
So
is a good third
their
string.
offense is stacked. Like they have players. Worst case scenario, if everything goes south, that'll help them out. But yeah, I mean at this point, the Cowboys are basically they've locked everything up. They have nothing to play for. You don't want players to get hurt, but the same thing, you still want to get them reps because you don't want to basically have them rest for what amounts to basically 3 weeks, right? You have this whole week, you have the next week where they have the bye, and then the week after that when they play. So basically you don't want to have them cold for 3 weeks. You want to get at least some kind of stuff going this week, and then next week if they play, be it the Packers or the Giants or, even if it's the Lions or the Washington team, like they don't want to basically be rusty come into that game. So you get them a couple of, reps right now just to get them kind of healthy and everything. They're not healthy, like snaps, reps, just kind of get him moving and everything else like that. And don't worry about Tony Romo because he's not going to be someone you have to worry about. Let Dak Prescott play for a little bit, and then let's go on to the playoffs.
All right, well, we do agree that it's probably best that Tony Romo doesn't play just for the Cowboys' sake because they could get something very valuable for him.
Oh, absolutely. Get something valuable for him, yeah.
And I do think he's going to get traded. I actually want Tony Romo to go to the Broncos. I think that's the perfect spot for him.
That'd be really fun because you basically just go Peyton Manning 2.0, right? Exactly. He's not as good as Peyton Manning, but the whole kind of rent a quarterback kind of thing.
If Tony Romo goes to the Broncos, I think they are a Super Bowl contender. They can probably be a Super Bowl favorite. That's how good. That's how good Tony Romo can make the team. That's all it is. They're just a quarterback away.
Right.
We've seen it this year. The Broncos are not in the playoffs because of play at the quarterback position.
Yep.
But that concludes our show, Anthony. We had a great show. This is our first show together since the post-Alex era.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope he's doing really well. But yeah, that concludes our show, guys. And we'll be back tomorrow, as always. We're going to discuss... Oh, there's no Thursday night game. And
nope, it's only this week. Right. Sunday or last week of the season, they just do Sunday games.
There's no Thursday night games, so we're not going to do that. So we're probably going to talk about some college bowl games. We didn't get time to discuss that today, but we'll probably talk some about those games earlier this week, tomorrow, and of course we got some big games heading this weekend in college football. But that concludes our show. As always, I'm at. I was about to say. Anthony.
Are you Alex?
I was about to say I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Anthony.
And we'll see you guys next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.